There you go. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending the municipal planning meeting, September 23rd today. I'll just give some additional instructions due to COVID. Callers will be placed on mute until the roll call is initiated by the planning administration assistant, which we've already done. During the public meeting portion of the proceedings, the following procedure will be taken for each application being considered. I will announce the application in order as listed on the agenda. Jennifer Current, Senior Planner, will summarize her findings and give recommendations. The applicants to the application being considered will be asked if they wish to add any further information or comments. All participants will be unmuted for this portion of the proceedings. The public will be asked if they wish to make any comments on the application. In order to be recognized by the chair, please approach by stating your name and through the chair and that you would like to make comments regarding this application. Once the chair has recognized you, you may be able to speak. So I'll call the meeting to order at 9:31. Sorry for the lateness, but little technical issues we're still trying to get through. My first order of business here is the territorial land acknowledgement. Before our meeting gets underway, I would like to formally recognize the traditional keepers of this land and specifically our neighbors of the Alderville First Nation with a formal territorial acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Alma-Calderman is located on the Mississauga Anishinaabeg territory and is the traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabeg. The Township of Alma-Calderman respectfully acknowledges that the Mississauga Nation are the collective stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. Thank you. Council, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none. Approval of the agenda as circulated.
There's an addendum.
And there's an addendum. Do you have it there?
This is the addendum. It's all these issues that came in.
Yeah, well, the addendum is, the motion is, be it resolved that the municipal planning meeting agenda of Thursday, September 23rd, 21, with the inclusion of an addendum, and that is the correspondence received for the Lilac Valley Road application. I don't have the number with me. 15. AH 15 2021. And that'll be council's decision to put those on the agenda. Could I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Booth, second by Councillor Phillip, to add them as well to the addendum. Okay, to approve the addendum. All in favor? Carried. So item 9 is the public meeting for zoning applications. Oops. Oh, here. I got it. I got it here. Item 5, municipal planning meeting minutes of Thursday, July 29th, 2021. Be it resolved that the municipal planning meeting minutes of Thursday, July 29th be received and filed, I guess. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Phillip, seconded by Deputy Mayor Gibson. All in favor? Carried. Item 6, motion to adjourn to a land division committee, committee of adjustment meeting. Be it resolved that the council of the township of Alnwick-Haldeman, being a land division committee, committee of adjustment, adjourned to a land division committee, committee of adjustment meeting for the purpose of hearing consent applications at 9:35.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Councillor Hogg, second Councillor Phillip, all in favor? Carried. So the first consent application is application AH 13-2021, Margaret Benz, agent Chris Hoskin, and it's concession 4, part of lot 26, geographic Haldeman, to sever a surplus farm dwelling. Jennifer?
Good morning, through you, Mayor Latchford. Application AH 13-2021 and application AH 14-2021 are very similar. So I'm going to discuss them both at the same time, but then when it goes to make a decision, you'll need to make a decision on each of them separately. The property owned by Margaret Benz is located on the east side of Stewart Road, 163 Stewart Road, part of lot 26, concession 4, Haldeman, or geographic township of Haldeman. And the purpose of this application AH 13 and AH 14 are to sever vacant agricultural parcels from a developed retained land. Currently, the property is a farm property with a dwelling, a farm dwelling, and a cluster of barns and buildings in the center of the property. Normally, with the severance of a surplus farm dwelling, we just take off the dwelling and about 1 acre. But in this case, the dwelling, the residential dwelling, is located in the center of the property, and the well servicing that dwelling is located at the rear of the property. So it's very difficult to sever it off as one parcel. The application is to sever, or the applications are to sever the 2 fields, one to the north and one to the south, and have those as separate conveyable lots. However, because the property is located in the Oak Ridges Moraine and it is agricultural land, they would need to be rezoned to an agricultural designation to prohibit any future residential development on them. And with this application, the retained lot with the dwelling, it also encompasses the wooded lands to the southeast of the dwelling, and those lands are identified as an environmental feature in the Oak Ridges Moraine zoning. So that sort of gives an overall context to the applications. Ordinarily, we just sever off the dwelling and leave everything else as one parcel, but in this case, we had to have 2 separate applications which would sever off the agricultural fields because they're separated by both the woodland and the residential property and the residential dwelling in the middle of the property. So as I mentioned earlier, there is a livestock barn on the property, and that along with 2 silos, and that livestock barn is actually located on what would be the proposed lot line. So one of the conditions of consent would be that barn be demolished. The applicant and their agent are aware of that. It's an older barn, not in good shape, so they're going to demolish that barn if the applications are approved. Similarly, There's also a manure pit, which is located on the proposed retained lot, which would be decommissioned and demolished also. So the southeast corner of the property is forested, while the remainder of the property has been cleared and is under active agricultural cultivation. There's a water course traversing the property east of the existing dwelling, sort of within the wooded area. And agricultural land uses predominate in this portion of the municipality. There's large tracts of cultivated lands which surround the subject property, with the exception of the lands to the east, which remain heavily forested. There is some rural residential development in this area. However, the number of non-farm residential uses is quite limited. The property is located on the Oak Ridges Moraine and is designated Oak Ridges Moraine Countryside and Oak Ridges Moraine Natural Linkage in the township's official plan. And the PP, and it's because it's Oak Ridges Moraine Agricultural, the agricultural policies of the PPS are of particular interest in this case, and severances in the agricultural designation are limited generally to agricultural uses, agriculture-related uses, the severance of a resident surplus to a farming operation and infrastructure. So with this application, while we're severing off the 2 agricultural fields as the severed lots, it's in essence creating a surplus farm dwelling lot. We just have to do it in 2 applications because of the lot configuration and how the buildings are located on the property. So the PPS has been reviewed. Comments from Lower Trent have confirmed that consistency with section 3.1 of the PPS has been demonstrated. There's no natural hazards that are going to be impacted by the application. Compliance with MDS. The MDS guidelines do not require the completion of a MDS calculation for the severance of surplus farm dwellings. That's guideline number 9. In this case, however, the existing barn is going to be demolished, so there's no MDS issues. The application is consistent with the provincial policy statement. Okay. The application is located on the Oak Ridges Moraine. The Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan does permit the severance of surplus farm dwellings similar to the provincial policy statement. The proposed severance will not result in a developable lot. Both of the severed fields will have to be rezoned to an agricultural exception prohibiting any other residential development, which would preclude or which could potentially result in incompatibilities with the surrounding agricultural uses. The property is zoned Oak Ridges Moraine Countryside Zone and Oak Ridges Moraine Plan Review and Oak Ridges Moraine Environmental Zone in the township's zoning bylaw. Permitted uses in the countryside include agricultural uses, agricultural related uses. There's going to be no change in land use. The cultivated lands are going to remain under active cultivation, and the dwelling is going to remain a single detached dwelling. The application was circulated to Public Works, Northumberland County, Lower Trent, and Alderville First Nation. There were no objections or concerns raised with respect to the application. As a result of the public circulation, all landowners within 60 meters of the property were circulated on September 3rd, and a sign was posted on the property on that same day. I did receive one call from an adjacent landowner who was concerned about the potential for future residential development and had questions about how this application could be permitted. I explained that it was a surplus farm dwelling and that future residential development would be prohibited. I believe that they still had concerns about future development, but I haven't heard back from them since my initial conversation with them. So the recommendation is that the applications be approved and with the conditions included in the planning report, which specifically include the demolition of the 2 silos in the main barn and the decommissioning of the manure pit and the rezoning of the severed parcels to prohibit any future residential development.
Thank you, Jennifer. Does the agent have anything to speak to on this application? Chris Hoskin? I guess not. Anyone in the audience have anything to say about this application or questions? None? Any council members have any questions or concerns? Seeing none? Oh, sorry, Councillor Booth.
Just a quick question through you, your worship, maybe to Jennifer, or maybe it's through either Daryl or Public Works, but when they talk about the decommissioning and demolish of the manure pit, can somebody just explain that to me? Is it just a big concrete circle type thing that you think you see? Is it hooked up to any water or anything like that, or a well, and who is to the satisfaction of who in the town? Would that be Public Works that goes to look at it, or is it Daryl that goes to look at it once it's been decommissioned and demolished?
Through you, Mayor Latchford. The manure pit, it's a large, or it's a circular, I believe it's concrete. Chris can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's a circular concrete pit or container. It's submerged in the ground. You can see, if you look at an air photo, it's very clear, it's a circle. Decommissioning, I believe that decommissioning would probably involve emptying it if it has any material in it now. I don't think it's been used for a few years, so it's probably empty, I'm not sure. Emptying it, and they'll fill it with something, or they may crush it and then fill it. It will be to the satisfaction of the township, so Daryl and I can go out and have a look and make sure it's been decommissioned. It hasn't, I do not believe that they're connected to any water. They're intended just to hold the manure, so you wouldn't want it connected to any water. So it's just a matter of probably crushing it and filling it in.
Okay,
But I
thank you.
believe that
Sounds
Chris-
pretty simple. I just wanted to make sure I'm
Yeah.
thinking along the same lines.
Councillor Phillip?
Yes, thank you. And through the mayor, I just want to take it one step further. Councillor Booth triggered a thought in my mind, and that is that, is there some kind of a certificate that's issued by the health department or anything like that, or, an agricultural association, just to guarantee that there's been no leachate or anything like that? Or is this necessary? Like, what, I'm out of my element here, and so I'm really asking. I would think that Councillor Hogg would know maybe a little more there, and I just want to make sure there's no seepage possibility or anything like that.
I would think as long as it is totally empty, it would be fine. It's just more or less like a big swimming pool in the ground is what it is. And they're easily collapsible, and they just bury them and cover them right over. Is usually what they do. And I don't think there's any permits or anything involved with it, unless there's a demolition permit for the township. But I don't think that I don't even know if you need a building permit for one when you do erect it in the first place.
I don't know. And there hasn't been any livestock on that farm for a great number of years.
So no environmental implications then?
If it's totally empty, I wouldn't think so, no.
Mhm. Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Nothing further from council? Oh, Deputy Mayor Gibson?
Hey, I could be way off here because I'm really not much of a farmer, and I'm just kind of married to a gentleman farmer, but manure is meant to be spread on the ground. So what would be the hazard in anything leaching? It's not close to the water system, which is only servicing that home. I wouldn't think that there's any liability on part of the township in terms of the demolition.
Councillor Booth?
I guess my only concern was not so much the leachate, because you make sense, Sherry, about it would just be manure in there. I was more concerned about they actually, like Councillor Hogg said, they actually demolish it. So they wouldn't just leave it empty, because if it could fill up with water, it becomes a problem with if kids are playing near there or somebody goes in there or something. But if they actually collapse it all in and just bury it, that's totally fine. And like Councillor Phillip, I'm not a farmer, so I don't know. I just look at them and it makes sense to just bust it all up and bury it, and then that's good.
Councillor Hogg?
The idea of having liquid manure pits was to totally stop leaching so that there was no runoff whatsoever. So if it's totally empty and demolished, I think it would be fine.
Okay. So no further comments. I gotta keep an eye on. Sherry, you need to yell out at me. Without you being here right in front of me.
I will.
Okay, thanks. So Jennifer, we'll let you read the recommendations of AH 13th, make the decision on that one, and then we'll go to AH 14.
Okay, the recommendation, sorry. The recommendation is that application AH 13, 2021 by Margaret Benz, agent Chris Hoskins, to sever a vacant agricultural property in part of lot 26, concession 4, geographic township of Haldeman, now in the township of Alnwick-Haldeman, is hereby approved subject to the following conditions: that a registered survey for the severed parcel be submitted to the township, further to the printed plan of survey, a closed polygon vector file of the part boundaries shown on the reference plan is to be provided in spatially referenced Autodesk DWG Windows readable format to the satisfaction of the township. It is recommended that the applicant's Ontario land surveyor consult with the County of Northumberland GIS section to confirm acceptable standards and formatting. 3, that a draft transfer for the severed parcel be submitted to the township. 4, that the tax account for the subject property be paid up to date. 5, that a zoning bylaw amendment be in effect for the severed parcel pursuant to the Planning Act. 6, that the severed parcel be rezoned to prohibit any future residential development. And 7, that the 2 silos and main barn be demolished and the manure pit be decommissioned and demolished, all to the satisfaction of the township of Alnwick-Haldeman.
Thank you. Could I have a mover, please?
So moved.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Gibson, second. Councillor Phillip, all in favor? Carried. Okay. Now, Jennifer, we'll move to AH 14, 2021.
Certainly, through you, Mayor Latchford. The recommendation is that application AH 14, 2021 by Margaret Benz, agent Chris Hoskins, to sever a vacant agricultural property in part of lot 26, concession 4, geographic township of Haldeman, now in the township of Alnwick-Haldeman, is hereby approved subject to the following conditions. 1, that a registered survey for the severed parcel be submitted to the township. 2, further to the printed plan of survey, a closed polygon vector file of the part boundaries shown on the reference plan is to be provided in spatially referenced Autodesk DWG Windows readable format to the satisfaction of the township. It is recommended that the applicant's Ontario land surveyor consult with the County of Northumberland GIS section to confirm acceptable standards and formatting. 3, that a draft transfer for the severed parcel be submitted to the township. 4, that the tax account for the subject property be paid up to date. 5, that a zoning bylaw amendment be in effect for the severed parcel pursuant to the Planning Act. 6, that the severed parcel be rezoned to prohibit any future residential development. And 7, that the 2 silos and main barn be demolished and the manure pit be decommissioned and demolished, all to the satisfaction of the township of Alnwick-Haldeman.
Thanks, Jennifer. Could I have a mover, please?
I can move that. Councillor
Moved
Hogg.
by Councillor Hogg, second by Councillor Booth. All in favor? Carried. Our next application is 2554163 Ontario Inc., AH 15/2021, concession 9, part of lot 32, geographic Haldeman, and it's a lot line addition. I'll let you start, Jennifer.
Certainly, through you, Mayor Latchford. The purpose of application AH 15 sorry, I have a mistake in my planning report. I have 2019, it's 2021, to sever a parcel of land for lot addition purposes, which would add land to the adjacent property at 10,118 County Road 9.
Can you mute them, please?
Okay, so with this application, it would sever a parcel of land which is approximately 13.57 hectares and add it to an adjacent property to the immediate west. Both properties are owned by, for ease of conversation, Coburg Sand and Gravel. So Coburg Sand and Gravel wants to take a portion of the property that is known as 206 Lilac Valley Road and add it to their licensed aggregate parcel that is located immediately to the west. Right now, the licensed aggregate property to the west is, according to Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, licensed with an aggregate license, capable and permitted to remove up to 500,000 tons of aggregate per year. In 2020, Coburg Sand and Gravel purchased a portion of an unopened road allowance between lots 32 and 33, concession 9, which allowed for the uninterrupted ownership of the two properties. So previously they were interrupted by a municipal road allowance. The municipal road allowance was sold to Coburg Sand and Gravel, added to the aggregate property, so they now have continuous operation. Now the lands on the west side of 206 Lilac Valley Road, so the lands that are subject to this application, a portion of those lands have been identified in the township's official plan as an aggregate resource area. So with this application, they would be taking the lands that have been identified as an aggregate resource area and adding them to the developed aggregate property. Now, any expansion to the Coburg Sand and Gravel licensed operation, so any expansion onto the proposed severed lots would require a new aggregate license. They would have to go through the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry aggregate licensing process. And through that process, they would have to do the necessary environmental work, which generally includes hydrogeology, natural environment, natural heritage, environmental impact. In this case, there are several water courses that traverse the property. So a hydrologic evaluation is required. We would be looking at traffic, all of those sorts of things. So those things are typically done at the aggregate licensing process or stage. Right now with this application, they're moving land from one land that has been identified as an aggregate resource and adding it to land that is already licensed. Now I did email the the agent for Coburg Sand and Gravel, asking if they had any information regarding the quality of the aggregate, because a number of public comments that have been received questioned whether or not this was a viable aggregate or quality aggregate resource. And Coburg Sand and Gravel had the applicant Weston Consulting had reached out to their client Coburg Sand and Gravel, and as of first thing this morning, they didn't have an answer with respect to aggregate, the quality of the aggregate, and whether they've undertaken any testing. So the property is located on the Oak Ridges Moraine and is subject to the policies contained in the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan. Now, the Oak Ridges, section 35 of the Oak Ridges Conservation Plan does permit extraction of aggregate resource from lands within the Oak Ridges moraine. Now, that extraction has to take place, or the licensing of it has to take into consideration the policies of section 35 of the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan, which speak to the environmental protections and rehabilitation. Now, aggregate extraction is also permitted both in the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan and the provincial policy statement in agricultural areas. The section, it's 2.5.1, I believe, of the PPS. I may have that number wrong. I apologize if I do. But the PPS contains specific policy about agriculture or aggregate extraction in prime agricultural areas. Generally, it has to be rehabilitated to the agricultural standard, except I believe there is an exemption if the extraction is to take place below the water table. So both the PPS and the Oak Ridges Moraine Plan do permit extraction, but it's important to remember at this point in time, we're not talking about an aggregate application. It's a lot addition, but you can sort of see where it's going. First, they bought the road allowance, and now they want to add the lands that are identified with an aggregate resource and add it to the lands that are already licensed. So we can sort of see the projection of where they're going with this. But at this point in time, there is no application for an aggregate license. And these lands have been identified in the official plan as an aggregate resource. And they've also, a portion of them also have been rezoned have been zoned in the township zoning bylaw as mineral extraction in Oak Ridges Moraine Mineral Extractive Zone. So they have that, the potential of these lands for aggregate extraction has been considered throughout the planning process. Where was I going with that? Sorry. Oh, right. Any application to expand the licensed area beyond the area that is currently zoned in the township's zoning bylaw will require both an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment. So if they want to go beyond that area that we've already identified in our zoning bylaw as mineral extractive industrial, because the land subject to this application are larger than the area that is currently zoned. So if they want to go beyond that area zoned, an application for both an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment would be required. Now, I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm jumping around a bit. I'm trying to make sense of this without following my report necessarily. There is a provincial groundwater monitoring well located on the subject property and the land subject to this application. And if this application is approved, access to that provincial groundwater monitoring well will be lost because it's currently accessed through 206 Lilac Valley Road. And these lands would no longer be accessed by 206 Lilac Valley Road. They would be accessed by the land to the west, the aggregate property. So unless the applicants or the owners agreed to allow continued access through the aggregate pit or some form of an easement over 206 Lilac Valley Road to provide access to that ground monitoring well, Lower Trent Conservation has noted that the well would need to be decommissioned and the equipment removed and returned to Ministry of the Environment. In my conversations with Lower Trent Conservation regarding that monitoring well, Gage from the Conservation Authority indicated that it was purely a voluntary program that they were participating in, and that there is no obligation on behalf of the owner to continue with it. But if it if access is restricted, the well would need to be decommissioned and the equipment returned to Ministry of the Environment. Now, apparently the well is not required as a condition of the aggregate operation to the west. That was one of the questions I had. If this well was required as a condition of the aggregate license, because sometimes monitoring wells are required in cases, but that is not the case with this well. And it's monitored by Lower Trent Conservation on behalf of Ministry of the Environment. So that. Now, a number of public comments have been received over the past 3 days with respect to this application, and council was provided with copies of all of the correspondence. I'm not sure if council wants me to go through each piece of correspondence. There was one specifically who requested that their letter be read out at the public meeting. So if you'll bear with me, I will find that piece of correspondence. And it was the letter from the Pilgrim family. And it asks, kindly read our submission out loud at the public meeting on Thursday, September 23rd, 2021. So dear corporate members, yet again, residents of Alnwick Haldeman Township find themselves submitting serious objections to the use of the former gravel pit on the north side of County Road 9, west of Lilac Valley Road and east of North Bethesda Road as a dump for Weston Consulting. This time, Weston Consulting are applying to expand the former pit by adding 13.57 hectares of currently viable farmland to its acquired dump. For what purpose? What materials are now being dumped into the pit? Has any sort of analysis been done on the contents of the pit, chemical or otherwise? What fill will be coming that requires such an expansion? Is there not a stop dumping order still in effect from Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry issued in 2018? Past correspondence from PPFI to the Corporation of the Township of Alnwick Haldeman on September 19th, 2018, September 26th, 2019, and January 14, 2020 has included our reasons for objections to this ongoing enterprise. The correspondence included a number of questions in addition to the requests for responses. To date, not a single acknowledgement of any kind has ever been received from the Township of Alnwick Haldeman. Does anyone on council or Alnwick Haldeman Township staff ever read any of the materials submitted by concerned residents and voters? Does anyone ever respond to those genuinely troubled about the future of our farms, businesses, homes, and environment? Council is elected to represent the citizens of Alnwick Haldeman Township. Who does the elected council represent now? So that was one of that had specifically asked that I read the piece of correspondence out loud. And I do say that I do read all of the public comments that are received with respect to planning applications, and I try to summarize those in the planning reports that are provided to council. Most often, I do not include the names of the people that provided the comments because sometimes people want to provide a comment, but they don't necessarily want their name attributed in the planning report. So there are a number of concerns raised, and they generally relate to timing of the application. Is this application premature with respect to the process? Because if they're going to be looking at an aggregate resources license, should they not be doing that first and doing the supporting information before the application is submitted? There's also a number of concerns with respect to the importation of fill, potentially contaminated fill into the site, given the history of the property. One of the recommendations to the condition of approval is a commitment from the owner not to import any fill into the property. There is concern, so there was potential concerns regarding potential of contaminated fill There are concerns regarding the quality of the aggregate and the need for it, as well as the loss of agricultural land. There are concerns with respect to the environmental impacts on the watershed and water filtration. Mr. Scott, sorry, I didn't mean to say a name. There was a concern over as a condition of the sale of the unopened road allowance to the owners of Cobourg Sand and Gravel, there was a requirement that the owners submit an undertaking that no fill material will be brought from outside and off-site into the pit. And we did not receive an undertaking. We received a letter from Weston Consulting saying that the applicants, Cobourg Sand and Gravel, would not import fill and would abide by the township's fill guidelines and fill bylaw. However, I did include a requirement as a condition of consent that an undertaking be provided, and that undertaking be registered on title through a development agreement. I'm going to put a pin in that because we'll discuss that in a minute. So there was also a concern that it was premature, that there's no aggregate on the site. There was concern that aggregate extraction from prime agricultural areas is not permitted by the provincial policy statement. That's another one with respect to the undertaking. Then there is so there's a request that that council refuse to consider this application until an undertaking is received. By including the requirement of an undertaking as a condition of consent, if the undertaking isn't received, then that's as a condition of consent, then the consent would lapse. Applicants have 1 year to fulfill conditions of consent. And if they decided they weren't going to complete that condition, then what that would mean is their consent application would lapse and they would not have it. The lot addition wouldn't go through. More concerns about the quality of the aggregate, concerns about the water quality, fill guideline concerns, concerns over the expansion of the pit into the Oak Ridges Moraine, environmental loss, lack of effective monitoring and enforcement for the guideline, for the fill guideline. More concerns about environmental concerns and whether they can be restricted, impact on the environment. Just trying to see if there's anything new, anything different in any of the other pieces of correspondence. Council has received all of these. Detrimental to wildlife and agricultural uses, groundwater contamination potential. Okay, this one asked that I specifically read it out loud. Hello, Jennifer, please accept this email as our formal declaration of objection against approving proposed severance. If a reason is required, please record as obvious M&R and Oak Ridges Moraine related issues. Water, because apparently there is this water in this area is very high quality. Purest natural water systems of the world, most artesian wells in Canada. They have concerns at the present time. Our water is tested every 3 months, registering 0.00007 for contamination with a small trace of chlorophyll. So they're concerned that this would have an impact on their future water. Wildlife photographer concerned about habitat and quality of water. There seems to be some concerns over the previous denial and then the subsequent sale of the road allowance. Requests for natural heritage and hydrologic independent prepared, so that means prepared by the township, independent hydrologic and natural heritage evaluation with respect to the proposed activities. Provide neighbors, residents, written proof of an agreement with the owner and Lower Trent Conservation stating, oh, there is concern over the loss of the groundwater monitoring well. Apparently there are residents in this area that do reach out to Lower Trent on an annual basis to collect or get the information from that groundwater monitoring well. And they would like to see the continued use of that groundwater monitoring well. And then another one about concerns about dumping of industrial waste in the pit. So council has all of the correspondence. I believe that is a fairly accurate summary of the concerns that have been raised. Most can be divided into about three general areas: impact on the environment, impact on the water, impact on the environment and water, potential for future contaminated soil being imported into the pit, and the loss of agricultural land. Now that's a very broad sweep of the concerns, but I think it's generally representative of them. All of those concerns would be addressed through an aggregate licensing process. However, we're not at the aggregate licensing process stage yet. They haven't submitted an application. This is just an application that would see the lands with aggregate that have been identified as aggregate potential being added to the licensed aggregate property. Now, the applicant's agent, Weston Consulting, Ryan Gooder from Weston Consulting, I reached out to him last week, letting him know about the condition requiring the submission of an undertaking not to import any fill onto the property, and it be implemented through the registration of a development agreement. The owner, apparently, he's in discussions with the owner, but as of this morning, they still have concerns with respect to that, and their concerns relate to the potential need to import fill for rehabilitation purposes. Because when you do submit an aggregate license application, your plan includes a rehabilitation plan, and which requires fill. Now, I believe when the municipality we undertook discussions with the client in Weston Consulting for the sale of the road allowance lands, we were told that they would not need to import any fill for the existing aggregate operation, that they had enough material on site. If as part of any new aggregate application, it was determined that they would need to bring in any fill for the eventual rehabilitation of the property, there would be, if the township had this undertaking already on title, there would be the possibility that that could be renegotiated at that point in time, and you could specify qualities of fill and everything else, but it hadn't really been demonstrated that there was a need for the importation of fill for the rehabilitations of the site at this point in time. So my recommendation was that the application be approved subject to the conditions. However, I believe, I'm not going to speak for them. I believe Kevin Bouchard is here from Weston Consulting to speak on behalf of the applicant. And we can let him give council his comments with respect to that proposed condition. So I'm here if council's got any questions for me, but I know that Kevin is here to provide council with some information with respect to this application also.
Okay, thank you. Do you wish to listen to Weston Consultant at this point, Council?
I'm not, whatever way you want to go.
Okay. Mr. Bouchard?
Yes. Good morning, Madam Chair, and thank you, Jennifer, for the very thorough review of your report and the circumstances around the report. And I too have read the commenting letters that have come in, so I'm well aware of that. This morning, and we have received obviously the report that's been provided by staff. And at this point, we cannot agree with the condition number 7 regarding the importation of fill, or the restriction on importation of fill onto the site as part of the current operation of the aggregate site. We have agreed, or our client has agreed with the guideline to adhere to the guideline for the importation of fill. And of course, he is not subject to the fill bylaw by virtue of an exemption that he has at the time, currently enjoys at the time. The request that I have for, Madam Chair, the request that I have for the committee and that I passed on to staff this morning is that we defer discussion of this application in order that we might have the opportunity to have further dialogue with staff and address these concerns and possibly arrive at an accommodation regarding the importation of fill on the site. So I would ask that the committee deal with the deferral request initially. And if they grant that request, we would be scheduled for the next available and appropriate committee meeting to deal with the full application and the full set of conditions that have been laid out. If not, of course, I would like the opportunity to sort of provide a fuller discussion and a response to the report before. So if Madam Chair, I'm in your hands and that of council in terms of the consideration of a request for deferral that we might deal with this particular item and address some of the concerns that have been raised by residents as well that have been forwarded on to the township.
Thank you. Jennifer, the Lower Trent comment about not having access to the well, can they not come across the other property?
They would be, it would be incumbent upon the owner of that property to provide them with some form of authorization allowing them to do that.
Well, I agree with that. And at the same time, it's an advantage for Coburg Sand and Gravel to allow that. And also, I don't see why, should this be separated, that they still couldn't go in through the farm. I mean, because it's also an advantage if that farm gets sold in the future, it's an advantage to that farm and the neighbors that that well be continued to be monitored. So is that something that could be added as a condition?
Through you, Mayor Latchford, that would, yes, I believe it could be. However, they would have to apply for an easement. I believe they would have to apply for an easement or some sort of grant of access over 206 Lilac Valley Road, such that if the property changes hands, there's the Conservation Authority has legal access over the property to get to that well. Also, I'm not sure of the location, the specific location of the monitoring well. If they were to receive, if Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry was to receive an application, an aggregate application, I'm not sure if it would be impacted by any proposed future aggregate operation. So that would have to be looked at too, but that would be at a later date.
Okay, but I see it right now as there's two options of getting to that well. And, you know, we don't have an application in front of us for
Correct.
a new licensing. This is simply a lot line adjustment.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Bouchard?
No, Madam Chair, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or concerns from the public? Those listening?
I believe that there are a number of people that are listening, at least a couple, that are listening with respect to this. So perhaps I'll just ask specifically, because I know the names. I believe Richard Scott or Rick Scott is on the line or here. Would Rick like to make any comments?
Well, Jennifer, first, are they commenting on an application that we don't have or simply reasons for not the lot line adjustment?
This is a public meeting for the lot line adjustment, and they should be given the opportunity to say whatever comments we have on the application.
Okay, that's fine. I agree with that.
Yeah. Okay, so Rick and Dawn are both, and Allison. And those are the ones I know specifically, Rick, Dawn, Allison. And I'm not sure about Tim. I see that Grit has her hand up.
That mean I can speak through you, Mayor Latchford?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I've been following this story since the beginning of January 2018. And at this point in time, I'm kind of partial to Mr. Bouchard's suggestion that this be deferred for further consultation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? And you can see
Hello.
that. Okay.
Hi,
From?
Mayor Latchford.
Yes,
Okay, I just wonder if you can hear me. It's Dawn Pilgrim speaking.
yes, go ahead, Dawn.
Thank you. I just wish to thank Jennifer for reading our letter and for her quite thorough summary of all of the concerns, which those of us living around that area are genuinely concerned about the possibility of contamination on all of the fronts previously mentioned. So I thank you for giving us some time and consideration for to voice our troubles. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mayor Latchford, it's Grit Cole again.
Yes,
The reason I'm in support of possibly the council choosing to defer this is because number 7 is of utmost importance to all of the residents in that area. And that is something that really, really is of crucial importance to everyone. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, council. I'm going to open it up for questions from council. Councillor Phillip?
Thank you, Mayor Latchford, and through the chair. I wanted to thank Jennifer for her thorough report. I am particularly interested in the protection of the water resource, and so therefore I was particularly interested in Jennifer's comments around the maintenance of the agreement that we all remember was that there would be no possibility of outside fill being brought into the pit. And council agreed to that. And I know that Jennifer has that as one of her major objectives, is to get signed off on that so that there's no question of that particular piece. So I thank her for that, and I still stand to support that, and will do. My second comment is based on the idea of deferral. I agree that there are too many unanswered questions on both sides of the table. And so I think to provide clarity, it would be a good idea to defer and give us, both parties, an opportunity to do a little more research. That being said, it seems to me that it seems to me that the aggregate licensing process is probably makes more sense for it to be first, not come after. And I would like the process to look at that, so that we truly get an idea of where the company is heading. And I understand in no uncertain terms the necessary steps involved in an aggregate licensing process, and they are extremely strict. My final comment is, so the cart before the horse is kind of where I'm going there. And the final piece is, again, referring to protecting our water resource, and make sure that it was my understanding and council's that there was adequate fill to do the rebuilding of that pit. And I'm not quite sure what has changed there. The pit is essentially had no changes that I'm aware of. So I'm not quite sure what changed there that would require the importation of clean fill. And I would, until we've had this deferral and a further understanding along that line, I would stand on the ground that council put forward initially, which is that the company said very clearly that there was enough land, enough resource within the pit area to recondition the pit after. So my question for the company and for deferral would be, what's changed? So those are my comments, Madam Mayor, and I want to thank you for addressing this and providing open conversation with the community. I think that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phillip. Jennifer, maybe that's something you can answer, because at the time, there was a restriction on fill for the existing pit. This number 7, your recommendation for number 7, correct me if I'm wrong, is you're wanting something in there prior to an application, should there be an application to extend that pit. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we don't have that yet to deal with.
That is my recommendation, is they submit the undertaking required that would say that they are not going to import any fill, and that be registered on title. That was
How common is that?
There's nothing common about this. Every aggregate application is completely different. Our fill bylaw, right, and that undertaking is precipitated by the previous actions that took place on the property. And that's what's precipitated that. So no, it's not typical. You wouldn't ordinarily see something like that, but they did. The Cobourg Sand and Gravel did commit to adhering to the fill guidelines and the fill bylaw, and that they weren't going to import any more fill onto the property because they said they had enough on site. So for the eventual rehabilitation, So
There's lots there.
that's what we were told. That's what we were told a year or
Yeah.
so ago when when the road allowance was sold to them, that they didn't need to bring in any more. So each aggregate applications are notoriously difficult and contentious. I think there's only one other more contentious application in the planning world, and that would be for a new landfill site. Other than that, like aggregate operations are very, very difficult because there's a lot of concerns over them, and rightly so, because
and
they're
correctly.
a significant thing. So the reason I included that condition was because they had previously said that they were going to submit an undertaking. We had the letter from the lawyer, from their consultant. And so by getting the undertaking and registering it on title, then it provides even the municipality with more, it's basically a promise that they're not going to import fill, a very strong promise that they're not going to import fill, because right now, the way our fill bylaw works is it doesn't apply to licensed aggregate operations. So if there is a need in the future, and that's what I was trying to get at when I was discussing the undertaking, if there's a need in the future, if they do an aggregate go through the aggregate licensing process, and that they determine that there will be a need for additional material to be brought onto the property, that could be part of the aggregate licensing process. Where I'm not sure whether a municipality can specify where a material comes from in order to be imported for rehabilitation, or the quality of it, but that's a discussion that we could have during the aggregate licensing process. And then if need be, the undertaking that was registered on title could be modified to reflect what was decided during the aggregate licensing process.
Thanks, Jennifer. Now, the next question I would have to that is, applicants would see it as a barrier, not particularly this applicant, but any applicants. And so my question would be to you then, should number 7 be worded that would have to be visited and discussed as per the licensing, rather than just saying not to import any fill? If it was said, if fill is required to reclaim that property, and what are we going to do? So can we put something in there that the business could actually request that if fill's needed, that they come back to the council of the day?
Through you, Mayor Latchford. A condition of consent has to be something that a applicant or an owner can achieve within the 1-year time frame that they have to fulfill their conditions of consent. So it could be that over the next month or 2 months, we could come up with some wording that would satisfy both council and the applicant that could be registered on title. They had provided me with some wording yesterday that I didn't feel adequately supported what council's requirement was. So I had said that I preferred the wording that I had in my report. It could be over the next month or two that wording is developed that could be put on title that would potentially satisfy both the municipality and the applicant. And I believe that's what the applicant's agent is looking for, is a deferral, so that we could look at a potential for number 7 that would satisfy both the municipality and the applicant, the owner.
Okay, but you haven't presented that wording yet to council. That's.
No, I just
that would
received
be-
it. Their proposed wording I received yesterday afternoon.
Okay, thank you. That's okay. That's okay. Councillor Booth?
Yes, through you, your worship. Two questions and then a comment. Number one, and maybe you can answer this, Jennifer, I'm not sure. Who would pay for the decommissioning of the well? Is that the Ministry of Environment? They own that well? It's quite expensive, I understand, to decommission a well. It's not just something like putting dirt over it and then that's it.
Through you, Mayor Latchford, yes. Originally, the way it works is Ministry of the Environment has contracted Lower Trent to maintain and look after these wells. So Lower Trent would ultimately be informed that the well needed to be commissioned. They would hire a licensed well contractor who would decommission the well appropriately. They pay for it, and then ultimately those costs are passed on to Ministry of the Environment, and Ministry of the Environment pays the costs at the end of the day.
Okay, the second question is, and there was a concern raised from some of the residents, is there still a stop order in effect issued in 218 for this to import no fill into this site?
I don't have an answer to that question. I don't know. I wasn't here when there was a stop work order on that property. I know that there were previous concerns that the Ministry of Natural Resources was involved. There had been some environmental testing done on the fill that was imported. And I believe that issue has been resolved, and there has been no further importation of fill. I don't know whether there is still a stop fill order or something to that effect.
Can you answer that, Kevin?
My apologies for the hesitation. I was on mute. I don't have direct knowledge of the circumstances in 2018. My understanding, though, in discussions with Mr. Ryan Gooder, who is representing this file, is that the issue are much along the same lines as been provided by Jennifer, that there was a concern about the importation of contaminated fill. The response was to test the material, and it was determined that it was not contaminated fill and that the issue was resolved. So that's my understanding in conversation with Mr. Gooder.
Okay, so my comment then is, I've read over all these points that have been raised by the residents, and they raise some very good points. And I'm going to agree with Councillor Phillip. I think this should be deferred. I take big exception. A big concern is that in January 23rd, 2020, when they came to us, Coburg Sand and Gravel, and wanted to buy from us that little section of land, they said that they were going to deliver an undertaking that there would be no fill brought in. They told us that, and from what I'm understanding from some of the comments here, that was never done. Is that true, Jennifer?
That is true. We don't have an undertaking. We have a letter from Weston Consulting saying that they would agree to adhere to the fill bylaw and the fill guidelines prepared by the township, but we do not have an undertaking.
So that was a motion that was moved by Councillor Phillip and seconded by Deputy Mayor Gibson. So then if that's true, you made the comment, Jennifer, that they have 1 year time frame to meet these exceptions or whatever. So has that gone through, that sale? If they didn't, that was a motion that was put forward saying that the sale of the road allowance was they would declare that they would not import any fill. So if they haven't given us that undertaking, has that purchase gone through?
The purchase has gone through. That's a different, they've got 1 year to fulfill a condition of consent, which is different than a municipal sale. So
you're saying the motion that was made by Councillor Phillip and Mayor Gibson means nothing then?
I'm saying that we did not receive the undertaking and the sale still went through.
So that's where my big concern is, and the comments from the residents is, even with number 7 in there, they didn't do it when we asked last time, And it doesn't look like they're going to do it this time. I remember somebody asking that question on January 23rd about would they require any more fill for the rehabilitation, and they said no. And that's why I was one that voted in favor of that, to say, okay, then fine, they can have that little section, but they're not going to bring in any fill in. So I would agree to a deferral, because there's some very good points here that have been raised by the residents. And from what I see, Coburg Sand and Gravel has not met the requests that their obligations. That's correct, Mike. And that's been proven a year ago when we asked that and the motion was passed, and then we find out now that they've not done that undertaking. So if we were to go forward with this and number 7 was in there, are you saying that consent wouldn't go through without meeting number 7? Jennifer?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor Gibson?
Thank you. I don't know if we're past the public comments portion, but I see Mr. Scott has his hand up, and I don't know whether or not we want to recognize that. I would like to speak to the issue, but I just, given the technology and how we're all struggling to work within these meetings, I just wondered if Mayor Latchford, if you wanted to recognize him to speak before me.
I'll entertain the motion for that, if you want to make the motion to allow Mr. Scott to speak.
Okay, I'll make a motion to allow Mr. Scott to have the floor to speak.
Can I have a seconder? Councillor Phillip, all in favor? Carried. So Susan, if you open that to Mr. Scott, please.
Thank you, Mayor Latchford. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks very much. Sorry, I was having technical difficulties. I dialed in on my phone and I guess I couldn't be heard earlier. The point that I really wanted to make was the one that was raised by Councillor Booth, primarily the fact that the letter that came in from Weston Consulting, basically committing not to bring fill into the pit. That letter was delivered prior to the resolution being passed by council. Basically a representation they made. My understanding was it was on that basis that council actually approved the sale of the road allowance. And so as Councillor Booth very aptly stated it, I think it's premature at this point in time to consider the severance when you still have an outstanding undertaking which hasn't been fulfilled by Coburg Sand and Gravel. And because now I hear that they're not prepared to deliver the undertaking that was previously committed. So anyway, that was largely the point. I mean, I do have some other issues or other points to raise, but they were pretty much set out in my letter. My primary concern, having heard Mr. Bouchard speak, was the undertaking which they previously had indicated that they would give.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Gibson?
Yeah, thank you. I don't have a lot to add to the very good comments that have come forward by both of my fellow councillors, Phillip and Booth. But there are a couple of things that I would like to raise. And it does concern me that there is not timely communication with Coburg Sand and Gravel. It concerns me that they haven't followed the guidelines as we set out in terms of the undertaking. And there's a couple of things. I think it would be irresponsible on our part not to put something in place to make sure that there is still access and monitoring to that groundwater monitoring well. I think that's very important. I've heard that loud and clear from the residents around there. So I think, there's that we need to consider. And I feel very strongly that, we need to have more information and satisfaction in regard to number 7 on that, on the list that Jennifer's put together of conditions. So I would go along with the deferral so that we can get some answers to that. But it has left an unsettled feeling for me in terms of our past interactions with Coburg Sand and Gravel.
Thanks, Sherry. Anything further from council? Mr. Bouchard?
Let me check my mute. Nothing further from me, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, I think we've asked the questions and got clarification on what's what in the questions. And I wanted it to be pretty specific, so I've got that. And I can attest to the water quality in that area. To go back years ago into the 70s, the reason the fish culture station was put at Harwood was because we were the choice out of 11 places in Ontario for perfect water. So people should be concerned about the water and the water quality in that area and hanging on to it. And that's a message. Maybe you didn't know that, Kevin, but that's maybe something. I'm sure you've done testing and whatever, but that's something that the neighbors need to be concerned about and kept up in that area.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying your business can't do that, but it is well known in that area. Okay. So I'll entertain a motion from council for, did I get my number? AH 15, 2021. Councillor Phillip.
Thank you. And through the mayor, my motion is to defer at this time.
Okay. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Booth. Any further comments from council? Calling for the vote. All in favor? Carried. Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for the others who attended this meeting and the neighbors. And just in case some of you go off before we're finished the meeting, I just want to thank you and for your comments. Our next one is AH 16, 2021. Ronald and Shelley DeKaiser. Concession 2, part of lot 7, geographic Haldeman, and it's a lot addition. Jennifer?
Through you, Mayor Latchford. This application is for a lot addition. The property is located on the north side of Telephone Road. And with this application, an approximately 0.03 hectare parcel of land would be added to the adjacent property to the east at 1328 Telephone Road. It would the purpose of the application is the neighbors built a detached garage, and the detached garage encroaches onto the neighboring property to the west. So with this lot addition, the garage will be located entirely upon the property on which they thought it was being built and provide a sufficient setback from the property line. So that's the purpose of this application. There's no new developable lot being created. Both the benefiting parcel and the retained lots are developed with single detached dwellings. No, there's no new development being proposed. It's just to permit the garage to be located entirely upon the property that they thought they built the garage on. They were just mistaken when they built their garage. They were off by a little bit. So it's about a 3-meter strip of land that's being added to the adjacent property. The application, the property is located in the rural designation. It complies with the policies of the provincial policy statement. It's not located on the Oak Ridges Moraine. It's located in the rural area in the Northumberland County official plan. It's consistent with the policies in the county official plan. The township's official plan does allow for lot additions, severances which have no effect of changing a boundary or which does not create any new buildable lots, which is the case here. Both the subject property and the benefiting parcel are zoned rural. No agency comments were raised or concerns. There's no need for a new entrance. Lower Trent has no concerns with it. They've commented that it's consistent with the provincial policy statement. They did note that there are some Lower Trent regulated areas on the property. However, the development, this will have no impact on it. They've determined that a hydrologic evaluation is not required because there is a hydrologic feature within 120 meters, but no new developable lot is being created. And the property is not located within the Trent Source Protection Area. So the recommendation is that the proposed lot addition be approved, and just to clean up their property boundaries and ensure that the person who built the garage owns the land on all of the land on which the garage was constructed.
Thank you. Are the applicants here and wish to address this application? I don't see them on. Public wishing to ask a question or make a comment on this application? Yeah. Council, any questions or concerns? No. Okay, Jennifer, we'll do the recommendations. Yeah, she's got to read these. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I just looked up. The recommendation is that application AH-16-2021 by Ronald and Shelley DeKaiser to sever a parcel of land for lot addition purposes in part of Lot 7, Concession 2, Geographic Township of Haldeman is hereby approved, subject to the following conditions. 1, that a registered survey for the severed parcel be submitted to the township. 2, further to the printed plan of survey, a closed polygon vector file of the part boundaries shown on the reference plan is to be provided in a spatially referenced Autodesk DWG Windows readable format to the satisfaction of the township. It is recommended that the applicant's Ontario land surveyor consult with the County of Northumberland GIS section to confirm acceptable standards and formatting. 3, that a draft transfer for the severed parcel be submitted to the township. 4, that the tax account for the subject property be paid up to date. 5, that the severed parcel be deeded as a lot addition to the recipient property, giving the applicant's lawyer, and that the applicant's lawyer submit an undertaking to register a consolidation on title, giving effect of the lot addition. And 6, that the applicant's lawyer submit a legal opinion verifying that the lot addition lands will merge on title with the recipient parcel under the Planning Act.
Thank you. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Councillor Hogg, second by Councillor Phillip. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Item 8, motion to reconvene to the municipal planning meeting, and the motion be it resolved that the council of the Township of Alnwick, Haldeman, being a land division committee of adjustment, Reconvene to the municipal planning meeting at 11 a.m. Item 9, public meeting for zoning applications.
Mover and seconder.
Oh, yeah, I need a mover and seconder on that.
I'll make that motion.
Councillor Booth, and Councillor Hogg and Councillor Booth, I saw your hand up. All in favor? Carried. Now I'll go to 9. Application from Kenneth R. Barlow, Z 14-2021, bylaw number 95, 2021, concession 4, part of lot 5, geographic Haldeman. So I'll get Jennifer to take us through this too. This is tidying up severance.
Yes, through you, Mayor Latchford. This is an application for a zoning bylaw amendment that was required by condition of consent applications AH 6, 2021 and AH 7, 2021, which were approved by the Land Division Committee on May 27th, 2021. With those consent applications, 2.4 hectare severed lots were created on the north side of Shelter Valley Road between 3218 Shelter Valley Road and 3264 Shelter Valley Road in part of Lot 5, Concession 4, Geographic Township of Haldeman. So that there are 2 severed lots were created, and one of the conditions of consent was that the lots be rezoned to the rural residential zone, and that the retained lot be rezoned to a rural exception zone, because the lot frontage requirement for the rural zone is 60 hectares and the retained lot would only have 28 meters of frontage. So the consent applications were reviewed at the time. The applications are consistent with the provincial policy statement, the township's official plan, the county official plan, and with this zoning bylaw amendment, they will comply with the requirements of the township's zoning bylaw amendment, zoning bylaw. A portion of the property is located on the Oak Ridges Moraine, but that portion subject to the consent applications and subject to this application are located outside of the Oak Ridges Moraine. So at the time of the consents, the public works manager reviewed the application and he said that entrances would be permitted on the conditionally approved severed lots. Comments received from Northumberland County say they have no objection, and Lower Trent had no objection. The application was circulated to all landowners within 120 meters of the property on September 23rd, and a sign was posted on the property on that same day. No public comments have been received. So my recommendation is that the proposed or the conditionally approved severed lots be rezoned to the rural residential zone, and the retained, that portion of the retained lot that is located within the rural zone be rezoned to the rural exception 151 zone. I'm going to make a note that on the key map provided with the application, there's an error because as proposed, it would have the entire property except for the severed lots be rezoned to rural residential rural exception, when it's only those lands that are currently zoned rural that we want to rezone to the rural exception. The northern portion of the plan of the property will still remain zoned their Oak Ridges Moraine zones. So that change will be made to the zone schedule.
Okay, thank you. That's what's listed in the bylaw.
That's what's listed in the bylaw. When you make your motion to approve the bylaw, if the motion could include a reference to only those lands currently zoned rural be rezoned rural exception 151. And that will clarify it, and I will amend the schedule that goes with the bylaw.
Council? No, seeing none? We'll just move this to, do I need a motion here, Pat, or I'm just moving it to, or it's just going to the bylaws?
Do you do the bylaws now or later?
They're at 11 on
Yeah.
the,
So
we're
we
just going,
just received Jennifer's report.
okay. I'll have a motion to receive Jennifer's report, please. Councillor Booth? Councillor Phillip, all in favor? Carried. So our next item is item 10. We received an email from GLAM, and that's the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence. I can't see the fine print. Management, Municipal Management Committee, something like that. They're known as GLAM. And their email was September 2nd, 2021, and it's a report, but it's the impacts of high lake water and St. Lawrence River water levels on Ontario municipalities and conservation authorities. So if I could have a motion, be it resolved that the email correspondence received from GLAM dated September 2nd, 2021 be received and filed. Moved by Councillor Phillip, second Deputy Mayor Gibson, all in favor? Carried. Our next communication is an email received from the Honorable Minister Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, dated September 9th and 2021, and it's Re-Site Plan Control Guide. Be it resolved that the email correspondence received from Honorable Minister Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, dated September 9th, 2021, be received and filed. Can I have a mover, please?
I can move that.
Councillor Hogg, second. Councillor Booth, all in favor? Carried. Okay, here we are at our bylaws for the Barlow property. This is bylaw number 95-2021. This is the last one that Jennifer has just read out, being a bylaw to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw number 19-2019 as amended of the Township of Alnwick Haldeman for Kenneth R. Barlow, concession 4, part of lot 5, geographic Haldeman. Be it resolved that bylaw number 95-2021, being a bylaw to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw number 19-2019 as amended of the Township of Alnwick Haldeman for Kenneth R. Barlow, concession 4, part of lot 5, geographic Haldeman, be read and to be deemed a pass this 23rd day of September 2021. And we're adding only those lands zoned rural will be zoned rural exception, not the Oak Ridges Moraine part. And Jennifer will tidy that up. Are you good with that, Jennifer?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Booth, second. Councillor Phillip, all in favor? Carried. Our next item is item 12, and it's planning report number 2021-PED 45 re land squared shared tower re municipal concurrence for the construction of a new 90 meter guide wire communication tower at 12074 County Road 9. Be it resolved that council report number 2021-PED 45 from Jennifer Current, Senior Planner, dated September 23rd, 2021, re municipal concurrence for the construction of a new 90 meter guide wire communication tower at 12074 County Road 9, and we need a council decision on this. And can I have a motion to get it on the floor? Moved by Councillor Phillip, second. Councillor Hogg. Is there anything you need to discuss through this, Jennifer?
It's fairly self-explanatory. We've gone through this process a couple times now with a couple other communication towers throughout the municipality. The township has a protocol for the establishment of new communication towers that requires proponents to undertake a public consultation process, which Land Squared has done on behalf of Shared Tower, Inc. They undertook a public consultation process, which was completed, I believe, in September of this year. And they did receive some comments from area residents. The subject property is located in Burnley. It's an area that has relatively poor cellular coverage at this point in time, and a number of pieces of correspondence from area residents have indicated their difficulties with that. There were a couple of concerns, one regarding potential for electromagnetic interference. However, a subsequent email was undertaken, or a subsequent email was received from a person saying that they had undertaken additional research and they had no concerns. I believe that Land Squared is on our, Leticia is on our meeting right now, and she had made a request for a delegation. And I believe they have a presentation for council, but my recommendation is that the letter of concurrence be prepared by the township, or that the township authorized me to prepare the letter of concurrence, which is required as part of their licensing process, because communication towers are regulated by the federal government, and a concurrence letter from the municipality assists them greatly in their licensing process. So my recommendation is to approve the letter of concurrence, but Leticia has, I believe, a presentation for council.
Okay, thank you. Council, you want to hear this presentation? Okay. Do I need a motion?
She's listed on the agenda, so
Okay.
if you want to, you could.
Oh, no, I'm okay. She's on the agenda here. I just didn't. Okay. Leticia, welcome, Delma Calderman.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for
Morning.
having us. My name is Leticia. I'm on behalf of Shared Tower, Inc. And I have here in the meeting to Arlene. She worked with us and she'll be presenting the PowerPoint for us for this proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I will share my screen. Let's see. Okay, can you see the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
Okay. So good morning. Thank you, Your Worship, Madam Chair and the Council, and everyone for allowing us to join in today. Again, my name is Arlene, and I'm here to present on behalf of Shared Tower and Land Square, the proposed telecommunication tower located at 12074 County Road 29, Warkworth, Ontario. So the background is who we are. Shared Tower, Inc. is 100% Canadian telecommunication company that specializes in building shared telecommunication infrastructure, while strongly working with local communities in minimizing any impact and bringing much needed cellular and internet connectivity. What is being proposed in response to significant need for wireless voice and data and emergency 911 coverage in the township of Alnwick-Haldimand, surrounding the Burnley area, Land Square, on behalf of Shared Tower, Inc., is proposing a 90-meter guide wire telecommunication tower to facilitate co-location for all incumbent carriers and wireless internet services providers, which is WISP. So what is being proposed? After numerous studies and explorations, the most effective and least impactful location for telecommunication tower is at the proposed address, 1204 County Road. And we've also included the coordinates. And why is this installation needed? So due to increased voice and data need in and around the Burnley area and the surrounding communities, our clients has identified this location to resolve wireless communication and capacity issues found. With the increase in wireless device use, along with growing trend of the discontinued use of landline telephone, the area has degraded wireless coverage services. The proposed new installation will significantly enhance current wireless services, and the tower height and design will allow for all national carriers and local WISP to improve their coverage and service to the local community. I also just wanted to add that this is part of what's called an EORN project, which is Eastern Ontario Regional Network Project. It's a nonprofit organization dedicated to improving rural connectivity to support economic growth and enhancing quality of life. So you can find more information at eorn.ca. So the site proposal, on behalf of Shared Tower Inc., Land Square is proposing a 90-meter guide wire tower. This will be able to accommodate multiple carriers at the address. This is the sketch of the equipment. At the very top here, you'll see a triangle. In that black shaded area, that will be the equipment. It's located at the north property, and it will be within a 10 by 10 meter fenced area. And for extra safety measures, these 3 will be anchors, just to create more safety. And this is located at the Oak Ridges Moraine Zone, which we will respectfully. Okay, so this is more a comprehensive map from Google Earth. This green pin dot is where the tower will be located. And so as well, this is the existing telecommunications site. Again, the green pin is where the tower will be located. And there are 3 Bell Mobility towers, which are quite far away on the town's borders. So that's that causes disruption in service and lack of service, if anything. So the site rendering. So you will see 2 pins. The tower location is at the top, and the very bottom pin is where the rendering was viewed from. So this one is, this photo is the view from the corner of 12074 County Road looking northwest. This is before rendering. And then this is after rendering. So you'll see, I didn't even see the first time, but the tower is located in the right hand of the picture. So it's quite far, and it's, unless somebody points it out, it's not super noticeable from the street. And then we had our colleague do a site visit to that location, and he took a screenshot of his cellular screen, and you see at the very top of his, I guess, screen, there's 2 out of 5 bars, which shows a lack of service. And this is outside where service would be the strongest. So if you were to go in a building, in a car, under trees, the service will definitely be impacted. So public consultation. During the public consultation period, our team circulated an information, nearby residents within the town's prescribed distance of 460 meters from the boundary of the property on which the tower is proposed. We also circulated newspaper advertisements in the Northumberland News and the community press. A virtual public information session was held on August 25th, which included 4 participants. From the meeting, only 1 resident, who was the adjacent neighbor to the east, expressed his concerns and oppositions to the tower. Sorry. We have reached out to them via phone to help answer their concerns and questions. We received 4 emails during this period and received an additional 4 following the period closing date, September 7th, 2021. And out of the emails received, 1 resident expressed opposition to the tower, and the rest expressed interest and support of the proposal. Most comments surrounded interest in the construction timeline of the tower, distance of coverage, Wi-Fi, side effects of towers near residents, and property value. All inquiries and comments have been addressed accordingly. So to conclude, the municipality process, Shared Tower Inc., is humbly requesting the Township of Alnwick-Haldeman to provide us with the approval of our application and municipal concurrence so we may work with the community in providing increased cellular and internet coverage for years to come. We hope that this presentation has been helpful in showing the great lengths we've went through in order to work with the town and community as much as possible in order to seek a proposal that will be best for the town of Alnwick-Haldeman and its surrounding residents. Please let us know if you have any questions and if we can help in any other way. Again, thank you very much for the time to allow us to delegate, present, and read the summary of our application. And in health, my name is Arlene. So on behalf of Shared Tower, Landsberg, we look forward to working with the Township of Alnwick-Haldimand and its community to build a lasting partnership. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from council that you have? Concerns? No? Well, that's down near where I live, so I'm desperately in need of better communications. And I know Eorn has been working very, very hard on this. So looking forward to staying connected.
That's good to hear.
So council, Mike, your motion then would be to approve.
It would.
Thank you. All in favor? Jim. That's okay. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
You're
much. We
welcome.
appreciate.
Okay, bye-bye. Any announcements or notice of motions from council? Just a reminder about September 30th being the recognition for Every Child Matters through the residential schools. So we did receive our shirts and decided to wear them at a council meeting. I should have mentioned it at the start, but the staff have them and the staff will be here and wearing them on September 30th. Sherry, Deputy Mayor Gibson,
I have nothing.
Councillor Phillip,
Nothing at this time. Thank you.
Councillor Booth,
Nothing at this time.
Councillor Hawk.
I have nothing.
Okay. I need approval of the confirming bylaw. Be it resolved that bylaw number 103-2021 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the municipal planning meeting of Thursday, September 23rd, 2021 be read and to be deemed passed this 23rd day of September 2021. Have a mover, please. Councillor Phillip, second. Deputy Mayor Gibson, all in favor? Carried. And motion to adjourn at 11:23. Have a mover?
So moved.
Deputy Mayor Gibson and Councillor Booth, all in favor? Carried. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, staff.
You.
And see you later.